So, the podcast daily. What do you guys want to talk about? The WrestleMania weekend? Mailbag? Well, we actually asked everybody that question. What do you guys want to talk about? It is going to be a Freaky Friday mailbag. That's Bill Landis, Jeremy Birmingham. I am Austin Ward. And we did get Bill 2 questions about WrestleMania.
Nice.
So we should do those first, and then everyone will just probably give up, I guess. But
turn off the show. Yeah.
They want to know who we think, current and former. I think we've talked about Jack Sawyer being the best fit of the current Buckeyes for future WrestleMania stardom. So they want to expand it. Anyone that you've ever covered at Ohio State that you think could be a WWE superstar?
Well, we did cover someone who's trying to become a WWE superstar, like kind of covered him. I don't think I ever talked to Kevin Feeder when he was here, but he was here when we covered Ohio State, and he is part of what is that thing they're doing called? It's not Tough Enough. It's like a new version of Tough Enough. People are trying out to be WWE superstars, and he's one of them. And he looks the part with his long hair and his beard. But I won't use him. That's a layup. A past guy. I don't know. Like, can I take Taylor Decker because he's a big guy with long hair and facial hair and tattoos? Like, he looks the part to me too.
He's got a lot of Braun Strowman in him.
He does. I don't know. I wish I knew who over the years was actually a wrestling fan to give them a shout out.
I wish I knew who the hell you guys were talking about.
Here he goes again, pretending like he hasn't been watching wrestling.
Hacksaw Cade Stover makes a ton of sense to me. I mean, let's be very clear.
I think he would go too far with it. He would actually hurt people.
I'm into that.
Yeah, but the company's not.
Yeah, they have insurance for a reason.
I'll say Taylor Decker. Taylor Decker's my pick.
Yeah. If you don't take care of your in-ring opponent, you're probably not going to last very long. And I don't think Cade could turn it off.
Yeah.
I mean, you guys have told me that JT Tuimoloau is a part of the bloodline. Is that not true?
We asked if he might be. I don't know that he is. I've never asked him about it. But I acknowledge his greatness for sure.
I think he's a guy that would actually, like, down the road be excellent in that sort of role because of his size and athleticism and the way that he can bend and move. Like, I think he's a guy that would actually be really, really good. I don't know if he has the personality set for it, like if he's got a character picked out, but like he certainly has the athleticism and the frame to be that type of dude.
When this question was expanded to former Buckeyes and with the current coaching staff, I thought this was a no-brainer. Nobody knows the business better than James Laurinaitis, and he's due. I think he should still pursue it in the offseason. The 2 weeks that he gets, I think that he should go to SummerSlam and just, I don't know, dust it off. There's nobody I think that could be any better than that.
Has he ever talked and asked a million whether or not he thought about going into the business? I've never heard him talk about it, but I'd like to have that conversation with him.
Don't you think he's seen the dark underbelly enough and has no interest in it?
Well, he's also been pretty good at football, so he didn't need to put his body on the line like that. And he's pretty good at coaching too, so doesn't have to. But if you're asking me to fantasy book somebody from Ohio State getting into the profession, I think he's got the best shot at it. All right.
How about Carlos Lachlan? Carlos Lachlan and those whatever these muscles up here are called that I don't have.
The traps.
The traps.
We actually got a question. I didn't put it in the actual mailbag that I'm drawing the questions from, but they asked if he had to bring someone. I'm sorry that I don't have the name written down, and I'm trying to remember it. If Carlos Lachlan brought his own tailor with him from Oregon to make him shirts that fit traps into his clothes.
Yeah,
that's what he's got.
He probably did.
Hey, no soft batch cookies allowed.
That's right.
That gives me a segue.
I think when you're used to cutting the sleeves off your shirts and hemming your own stuff, I think you learn how to do it. I mean, every photo I've seen of him is like a cut off sweatshirt. So I'm sure he's figured out how to sew on his own.
Something that we'll have to get into as we expect to talk to Carlos Lachlan for his introductory press conference next week. But I didn't know that I would start with this one for actual football stuff, but we were asked, as now the coaching staff is complete for Ohio State, Marlon wonders that one of the reasons why Ohio State has been losing to Michigan is that Michigan's staff has been superior. I mean, he didn't ask this. Do you agree with that? And B, does Ohio State now have the better staff in the rivalry?
I don't know. I probably agree with that. Maybe it's hard not to, right? They won a national championship last year. That's not always been the case, right? Like Jim Harbaugh got a hard reset and like really revamped his staff and ended up with a pretty good one. And it also helped him that his brother was just shuffling smart defensive coordinators to him. But yeah, they had a pretty good staff for the last couple of years. I would like top to bottom probably take Michigan's over what Ohio State has had prior to this year, but certainly not now. Not with what Sherrone Moore has kind of struggled to put together there in Ann Arbor. I would very much take Ohio State staff as currently constructed over what Michigan has going on.
Michigan beat Ohio State 2 of the last 3 years because they cheated. So let's make sure that is.
Well, Berm, their coaching staff was really good at deciphering signals.
But no, I mean, they obviously have had a very good staff. Harbaugh was drawing from the NFL, finding guys that he had a lot of trust in, and they did a great job with their strength and conditioning program, which is why that Ben Herbert is now with him at San Diego. But I don't think if you look at San Diego, the Chargers, San Diego.
Tijuana.
Do you know how long the Chargers have been outside of San Diego?
Yeah, I mean, Qualcomm is like on the outside of San Diego. It's not maybe not San Diego proper, but I mean, it's still San Diego. It's in the Gaslight district, I'm pretty sure.
Definitely not.
But I obviously, if you look at the rest of their staff, it's not like they didn't have inexperience in youth as well. I mean, you had guys like Grant Newsome, you had Kurt Campbell, the quarterback's coach, who came from Old Dominion. It's not like they had a bunch of heavy hitters and stuff like that they had throughout their program. Matt Weiss before him. You have veterans, and you have coaches' sons like Jim Harbaugh, like Jay Harbaugh, like Jesse Minter. Like you have some guys there, but a lot of that success just came from pulling from the tree of his brother, and they did a really good job. I would tend to agree that this year's Ohio State staff is going to certainly position by position probably be better. And I think that is maybe something we haven't been able to say. I think this is without question Ryan Day's best staff, and maybe the best Ohio State staff we've seen since the 2014 season. So I think there's a lot to that, but I don't know that it was as big of an advantage as, the cheating.
Definitely help to make this evaluation. You're talking about Jim Knowles with his long-term resume, but also what he's done from year 1 to year 2, heading into year 3 for Ohio State, a defensive coordinator, and then Chip Kelly, who you have one of the most respected offensive minds in college football, who also had success at the NFL level as an offensive coordinator. How much further do we have to go than that? Like, to me, that's the end of the discussion.
No, it's a pretty good trump card. It's not wasn't a bad offseason when it came to assembling this, but it's not. I think Ohio State's staff has probably, I don't know this, I'm assuming on average probably been like more experienced than Michigan's the last couple of years, because to Berner's point, there have been some younger guys on Michigan staff. But now it's like experience. It's not just like guys who've been around a long time. It's like guys that have like serious credentials like on their resume, besides just like being around for a while. Like there's innovators and, a couple of guys, or at least one guy for sure, who's considered the best position coach in the country. Like you have a good mix, like with James Laurinaitis, like on the rise, Keenan Bailey, a young guy who I think has a bright future too. So Ryan Day, I think, has struck a pretty good balance here with what he has on the staff.
Yeah, I think the biggest advantage has been that Michigan's coaching staff has had the ability to draw from the NFL well and be a little bit more diverse than Ohio State during the games, and they have allowed themselves to get more creative than Ohio State. And if you look at what Sherrone Moore did as an offensive coordinator, it was just not really putting himself into a box. He did a lot of different things. They do a lot of motion. They do a lot of play action. They do a lot of stuff to get themselves in situational advantages. And I think Ohio State, if there's one thing that you would say about the Buckeyes in the last 5-6 years, as good as the offense has been, they are getting and have been rather predictable. They've just relied on out athleting you and out, having better players. And at some point, when the talent starts to equate, it becomes harder to do that. And over the last few years, Michigan has certainly had a bit more talented team than they did in the early part of the Jim Harbaugh era, especially when you look at 5 stars like, JJ McCarthy, 5 stars Donovan Edwards, 5 stars Aiden Hutchinson. Like, they've had good players, and I don't think people maybe pay enough deference to the talent that they've actually had in Ann Arbor the last couple of years, because they've been really, really good. But I do think this year you'll see that the leveling off.
So I think, not a surprise, the three of us agree that Ohio State's coaching staff is better positioned than Michigan's. Scott took it a little bit further than that in this question. And bear with me, he's got a lot of thoughts. And he prefaces it by saying, this may sound odd, but some of the excitement about the season has already turned to anxiety. With the best coaching staff in Ohio State history and the best lineup in Ohio State history, the stakes are super high. If Ohio State doesn't win the national championship with this group, when will they ever do it? Therefore, is the season a failure if they don't win the national championship? And how should a fan watch this team? It's hard to just appreciate the skill of everybody with the sword of Damocles hanging over our head. Don't get me wrong, way better to be in this position than where we were last year, but these circumstances bring their own challenges for a fan. I think that's probably better suited for Berm to answer.
I mean, he's right in a lot of those ways. And how do you watch it with knowing that, and knowing that there's all that pressure on top of the season? I don't know. I think you have to just take a step back and realize that this is still a football game. It's still a game played by children, and it's not something that should control the happiness level in your life. But the facts are, we have not shied away from the fact that Ryan Day is in a precarious position this year. Like, everything is on the table, and they are loaded for bear, as some others would say. I'm not sure that I would say this is the most talented roster they've ever had. I think it's pretty close. I think it's a top 5-er maybe, and at least in my lifetime. But if you go back to 2015, I would think, heading into that season and the expectations of that season, coming off the national championship and with everything they returned, that season was probably like the most disappointing season in my lifetime as an Ohio State fan, because they were by and large the best team in the country. I don't know if you can say that right now, considering the fact that Georgia has won 2 of the last 3 national championships and returns, and an NFL first round quarterback and a lot of other guys. Texas is very good. Oregon's very good. Because Ohio State goes into this season with 2 relatively large question marks at quarterback and offensive line. Like, I think you can see everything else that they have and still feel really optimistic about where this team should go. But to suggest that those 2 question marks aren't like enough to temper enthusiasm a little bit would be false, in my opinion.
Yeah, they're not the favorite. Georgia's still the favorite, right? So it's not. I guess 2 things can be true. Like, yes, they're not the championship favorite. Yes, those questions exist, and I think they're fair questions. But also, they're definitely loading up to go after a national championship, and they're not hiding from that fact. So, like, I hesitate to like truly embrace the national title or bust thing every year, because I think it's important to be realistic some years. But I'm kind of there this year. Like, it just feels like they're really going after it, and they've not extended themselves, because I think this is who they want to be in terms of aggressive roster building moving forward. But this was kind of the first time we've seen that from them, and I don't think that was just because they were doing it for kicks, right? They're trying to go after a national championship here. I think watching Michigan hoist that trophy did something to ignite that, which is
made him
perfectly
feel some type of way.
Yeah, made him feel some type of way for sure. So like, if it doesn't happen, then yeah, I think it's probably a letdown, right? I don't agree with that assertion every year, but I would agree with it this year. I would hope, as an Ohio State fan, you're not consumed by that on April 5th, because it is April still. Like, there's a lot of work to be done. They're still kind of figuring out how this whole thing fits together. But come the fall, and that's the other part about it too, is like, they might lose a game or 2 this fall and still be in position to do that. Like, there'll be some recalibration, I think, that needs to happen. But if we're sitting here at the end of January and they haven't hoisted that trophy, then I don't see how this season is anything other than a letdown.
I think there's 2 things that I take away from both of what you guys said to answer that. One, Berm is talking about quarterback and offensive line, and Ohio State's ceiling is obviously going to be determined by what shakes out for those 2 spots on the field. And Bill, you mentioned a recalibration. That's really important for this. That we're not talking about the same postseason format that has always existed for college football, or even in the last 10 years. It's changed dramatically. And if you have to now live in a world where you have to beat 3 very good teams all in a row, or 4, depending on what happens in the regular season and seeding, that's hard. Like, do the top 2 teams in the NFL always play in the Super Bowl? They do not. It is difficult to win week after week in football. You're going to have injuries. You're going to have adversity. You're going to have balls that bounce in funny ways. And to have to do that over and over is making it more difficult than it already was to win a national championship in college football. You could overcome that maybe once in a regular season, and it's out of character. And the 2015 season that Berm mentioned, like, they probably should have been afforded the chance to do that, because I don't think they would have lost those 2 games. But it's going to be harder than ever not to get to the postseason, but to survive it. And winning that tournament is not going to be easy for anybody. And that's now the world that Ohio State lives in. So national championship or bust, that's probably not going to be a fun way for anybody to live as a fan. But Ohio State's never going to change their expectations either. So I'm not sure if this is actually a different question for 2024 than it is in 2023 or 2022 or any other year that we've covered Ohio State.
See, that's the hypothetical I was going to propose. If Ohio State runs through the regular season undefeated, they handle Michigan, they win the Big Ten, they're the number 1 seed in the playoff, they get to week 16, and all of a sudden your top 3 players get knocked out of a game by a targeting call, or and you lose on a last-second field goal that goes awry against Georgia. Is that a disappointment? I know it will suck. I know it will make people feel terrible, but then when you take a step back 3 months later, next April, do you look at the season and go, actually, that was awful. This was a terrible season. I don't know that that's true, because there are markers on the road, the goals that Ohio State set. And I think the biggest thing is that the biggest adjustment, I think, is going from 3 straight years where none of the goals were met. If you now hit 80% of the goals and you fall short on a last-second field goal to Georgia in the championship game, does that mean the other ones don't matter? And I don't know. I don't buy that. So that's where I push back a little bit on the championship or bust mentality. But this team needs to be playing for a national championship. They need to be playing a meaningful game at the end of December and in the middle of January. That's what I know. Otherwise, then I say, yes, it is a failure if this team is not in position to win the national championship.
Yeah. So sorry, Bill, you got something else on there?
No, I'm just trying to think. I think there's been some interesting conversation over the last few years, and I'm not saying that people should feel one way or the other. I'm just saying that it's gotten a little more complicated about what's more important, like beating Michigan or winning the national championship. And for a while, those 2 were linked. And even when the playoffs started, we thought they were linked, and then it turns out they kind of weren't. And now they're almost definitely not linked, or at least they don't have to be moving forward. But after 3 straight losses, I kind of feel like the Michigan game is kind of more important than anything else. I think they can beat Michigan, win the Big Ten, maybe not get all the way there, and people still feel pretty good about the way this season went. So I think it's just a point worth mentioning that from Berm. Yeah. After
beating Michigan 18 out of 20 times, the dynamic of everything flipped, and it became, if this is easy, this doesn't matter, let's just win the national championship. And I think that is recalibrating in the Ohio State fans' heart, in the cockles of their heart. Mm-hmm. And so while I understand it's been 10 years since Ohio State won a national championship, Michigan just won one, it puts the onus on the Buckeyes to get back there. I don't think that should be elevated above taking care of business in the Big Ten and just being in a position to win it. Because as you said, you're gonna have to play 4 playoff games. This season is going to be an experiment all in its own. And I don't know that you should cling so tightly to the final outcome as opposed to the processes along the way, because we're going to see things in this season that we have never seen or had to deal with in college football before.
One of those X factors, of course, Thomas acknowledged them right here. He said every year any college football team is likely to have 3 or 4, maybe 5 major injuries each season. Who are the top 5 players Ohio State can least afford to lose to injury if they're going to win the playoffs?
I don't know that we need to name 5, right? But
it was a lot. I mean, the guy took it. He asked the question. It's fair. If we want to adjust it, we can. 5's a fair amount. The 5 most important players. You can do that, Berm.
Okay, let's do it. Go.
Caleb Downs.
Yeah.
I think is number one.
I was going to say Lathan Ransom's number one.
Okay.
No, I think it's Caleb Downs.
I think it's Caleb Downs though. But
We've watched the Lathan Ransom value go up and up every single year, and I think the real beauty is having him and Caleb Downs back there together. So let me just say this: one of those two safeties, losing either one of them, I think would be devastating.
I think you could make a case that if they lost both, they could both be in the top 5. Like as important as safeties are to driving the overall defense, like they are so good, and they're the presence of those two, as we mentioned before, is what allows Sonny Styles to go to linebacker and changes the whole shape of the defense. Like I think for what we're talking about here, there's probably a world where like they are both in the top 5.
Yeah, I think there's like Matt Guerrero got quite a few questions about the depth in the room. I know Berm, you asked him once, but he got asked probably like 2 or 3 other times about the depth in the room, which I think is fair, right? Like it's not like I like Malik Hartford, but we need to see more from him, I think. Jaden Bonsu seems like he's really making a push. Like, is he actually ready to step up if they needed him to? Like it thins out pretty quickly there. We don't know what Jahad Carter will be able to give them. He's kind of sidelined at the moment with an injury. And that's kind of been his existence at Ohio State since he transferred from Syracuse. So it does, like when you factor in not like the importance of the position, but also like Caleb Downs being the best player at that position in college football. And then at the moment, what seems like a lack of depth, like that's probably the most concerning spot, at least the most concerning non-quarterback or offensive line spot.
He doesn't like this question.
I mean, I don't, because I again, I think losing Josh Simmons would be catastrophic for Ohio State. I think losing Jack Sawyer would be catastrophic for Ohio State just because of the consistency and the ability to eat plays up. The same thing with Tyleik Williams. I mean,
that's 5 you got there.
Yeah, I mean, there's also 1,000 other guys I could pick. I mean, I think that it's a team that is full of potential superstars. But yeah, I mean, if you lose one of the running backs, the other one, as long as the other guy's there, you feel like you're going to be okay. But you know, the value of this season is having the combination of all these guys. If you could certainly lose one of the receivers, knowing you have other guys, but you bring all these guys back, any one of those 9 guys that we talked about all offseason as returning, losing any of them would be devastating. So, I mean, I think that, you just got to keep fingers crossed there's none of those long-term injuries.
Yeah. Well, I think that's why you have to look at what positions do not have the overwhelming amount of depth that others do. And that's maybe a place where Emeka Egbuka becomes even more valuable, because wide receiver, like we are talking about maybe them getting to 5 guys if you're adding Bryson Rodgers in there or whatever happens with Jaden Ballard. But like he's the elder statesman. He's the tone setter for the wide receivers, and he has the ability to do everything outside, inside, running game, anything that Ohio State wants to do. Like, I think that raises the profile for Emeka Egbuka in a way that would be different than Travion Henderson or Quinshon Judkins tagging off in the backfield. So whoever wins the starting quarterback job, which we don't know who that's going to be at this point in spring, Emeka, the safeties, Jack Sawyer, like I think that and then Josh Simmons, like that gives you 5 or 6 options right there. Like beyond that, maybe we don't have to like expand the net.
Let me take this question and flip it on its head. Who are the 3 most important Buckeyes on this team in your minds?
The quarterback.
Whoever the quarterback is, Caleb Downs, and maybe Emeka. I don't know. I think there's a couple guys you could throw in that 3rd spot.
I think that's where I'm at. Yeah, see, I just don't know that I think I would have to have Jack Sawyer in there for just so many reasons. Number one, like he's sort of become the heart and soul of the team and the de facto leader. I would agree that whatever quarterback ends up emerging as the starter after spring. And Caleb Downs, Ohio State was the top 2 defense in the country without him a year ago, and they returned 95% of the people that played in it, or 90% of those starters. So, like, is is it just because he's so much better ceiling wise than what Ohio State's had? Or
he's just the best football player on the team.
Yeah.
I think that's what it is.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not disagreeing that he might be in that conversation. I don't know that it's that easy to pick one other than, in my opinion, Jack Sawyer, who is like the heart and soul of the football team.
He definitely is.
Yeah, I don't think you're wrong about that. I think when the question comes down to, is Ohio State winning a national championship, which players elevate their ceiling the most? And to me, that's where you go to Caleb Downs and the quarterback. Like, no one would ever want to see Jack Sawyer not part of that. He was the ringleader of getting this group of veterans to come back. He's going to wear the Block O. I'm almost certain of that. But like, could they still have a very good pass rush without him? I think we all expect that they would be in position to do that. But I don't know. The way he played at the end of the last year, you certainly think he's the one that raises the ceiling the most for that group. So I don't think you're wrong about that, Berm. Yeah, good point. Good conversation. Thanks, Thomas. Here's one from Tyler that you guys have a ton of insight on players. Thanks for the compliment. Are there any guys you have been incredibly wrong about?
Josh Simmons. No, I think honestly for me,
was incredibly wrong about Josh Simmons. I was not.
Yeah, you were not. No, can we go like beyond this roster? Because if we could, like, and I'm not just trying to throw out an interesting name. Like I actually thought Tate Martell was going to be a very good college quarterback, and like legitimately, I know people think I'm like joking when I talk about him. Like I wasn't. I actually thought he was going to be quite good, and then he ended up not being good. So that was probably the most wrong I've been on a player.
I mean,
I think Berm was with you for the most part.
Yeah, I've always thought that Tate Martell in the right system would have been a successful quarterback. I just think that unfortunately, the circus.
He tried all of them.
The circus around him made it nearly impossible for him to just focus on getting into a college system and learning how to actually play quarterback. And I don't think that Urban Meyer had any interest in teaching him how to play quarterback. It was like, hey, this is what he's going to do. This is what he does well. You put him in, he runs around, he does things. And I don't think that did him any service. And then obviously going to Miami, which was a disaster. And at that point, it's over. So, I mean, the window of opportunity for these kids to really take that leap is so small that sometimes it becomes difficult to really like know, okay, what makes you wrong about someone? I would think I felt like Zach Harrison would eventually become like a dominant pass rusher in the Big Ten, and he never did, but he still became a really good player and played very well as a rookie in the NFL and as a third-round pick. So it's like, I don't know that you're wrong about it, but we also said coming out of high school, like he's extremely raw and it's going to take a while for him to get there. Jamison Williams, like he wasn't that guy at Ohio State, and I don't think he could have been. So like sometimes it's just being in the right spot and the right system turns you into the player that people thought you were going to be when you go to a team that says, okay, just run straight and fast and we'll, as opposed to do all these other things. Matt Burrell is a guy that I thought was going to be really good at Ohio State, and never really developed into that. I think a lot of the conversation would be more about the offensive line over the years because like that spot is so much harder to project. Nick Petit-Frere, very good college player, but like, did he ever become a dominant player like everyone expected him to be? No. So I mean, we could probably go through a long list of people. Eric Glover Williams, like superstar, super freak, like he could have
Superman.
Yeah, he could have done a lot of things. But you go way back and like to 2006, and like guys like Darius Hiley from Cleveland Glenville, who was like unbelievable. Jamario O'Neal. I mean, there's guys throughout the last 20 years that you look at and you're like, man, how the hell did that guy not become what he thought he would be? Hell, we go back to like Mike D'Andrea back in 2002 in the Bobby Carpenter, AJ Hawk class. Like Mike D'Andrea was the number one ranked defensive player in the country by a lot of people's standard, the top linebacker in the country. And you've got Bobby Carpenter and AJ Hawk, who are these other two in-state linebackers that people just, we'll throw those guys in. It doesn't matter. You got D'Andrea. And those two both had decade plus long NFL careers, and D'Andrea didn't ever make an impact at Ohio State. So there's a lot of guys if you go back, but I don't know that it's getting easier. I think it's getting much easier now to figure out who's going to make it and who's not, because we have so much more insight into who these guys are as people than you used to, that it's not oftentimes their athleticism or their talent that makes people not live up to expectations. It's their personality or their vices or their work ethic. And so now, like, you actually get insight into those things before they get on campus or right when they get on campus. And so it helps shape the opinion really quickly, I think.
Well, I'm gonna approach it from the other angle, and it is with a player who is currently on the roster. In August of 2023, just a handful of months ago, after the first practice of training camp, I was ready to never watch Tyleik Williams play another down of football at Ohio State. He got hurt. There's people rolling their eyes. And I always give him credit for this. He said, well, I've been lazy. It has been about the work ethic. Like, I haven't been able to do this and that and the other thing. I thought that was it. Like, we weren't going to see him play another down of football for Ohio State. And I'm happy to be wrong. Watching him last year was a hell of a lot of fun. And the fact that he came back was one of the biggest surprises I think that I've had for guys weighing NFL draft decisions, and having spent time talking to Tyleik Williams in the past. I thought once he capitalized and showed the world that he could do that at a high level, that he would punch a ticket out of here and not come back. Like, I've been wrong about basically everything with Tyleik Williams, and kudos to him for taking on the work and showing up day after day and wanting to stick around and being and embracing the brotherhood and all those things. Like, I don't go into any situation like thinking this guy's overrated or he's going to be this or that. Like, I hope that all these guys that are 18-year-old kids with a dream, and like all of them have already achieved something that most people can never do, which is getting an Ohio State football scholarship in the first place. Like, I don't wait for them to fail or hope that they will. Like, I hope that they all can do the maximum amount. There just had been a period of time and hype that didn't match up for Tyleik Williams that I had grown fatigued by. And then he turned things around in a way that I definitely did not anticipate. And I'll be the first to admit that.
Yeah, and patience in these instances is so important. Like Johnny Dixon coming out of high school, the expectations for him were through the roof. And if you view the first 4 years of his career, you could say, well, he never did it. And then final year where he's healthy, he's a different player. Like, most instances where Ohio State players have not like lived up to it, I think you could find and a reason why, whether it's an injury, whether it's a coaching change, whether it's whatever. I mean, the Buckeyes have had 14 different defensive coordinators in the last 5 years. Like, there's a lot of things that have happened that stunt development and change people's career paths. I think about a guy like Legend Cavazos, for example, like coming out of high school, like athletically, like he hits every metric you want, but we didn't really know that maybe he wasn't that like into football until he got to campus. And then you start to hear things. And so and you start to like question whether or not the work ethic is there. But the athleticism is freaky. Like, he's a top 1%er of everyone in the world when you just look at size, speed, height, weight, all that stuff. But that's not really all that it takes to make it at Ohio State.
It is not. All right. We got over 100 responses here, I believe, and I took about 20 of them and narrowed it down. We're still not going to get to all the ones I have. So I appreciate all you guys for sending them our way and like wanting us to answer them on a Freaky Friday. We'll get to a couple more. Tyler has one football, one non-football.
Freakies.
Yeah. So we got most questions about the quarterback battle. That was one reason why Bill and I tried to dive deeper into that on the podcast daily earlier in the week, so you can get a lot of our thoughts about where it sits currently there. This is not specific to any of the 5 guys on the roster necessarily. How good does the quarterback have to be for Ohio State to get where they want to go? This feels similar to Georgia with Stetson Bennett, but maybe with more skill on the outside. Elite defense, receivers, and hopefully run game should mean that the quarterback does not have to be a hero, I think. But last season could be a counter argument to that. His non-football related question was wants to start golfing for the first time in his life at age 26. Where do I start? Should I head to the driving range and try to figure it out or get lessons right away? You should absolutely get lessons right away. Do not go to the driving range and try and teach yourself how to play golf. It won't work. So if you want to do it and have fun, I'll take the second part of that question. Please get lessons. You can go see my friends at the Ridge in Marysville, or you can go to Fairway Columbus. They have lessons there. go anywhere. Those are my two favorite places to go. But please invest in the lessons if you actually want to get into golf seriously, or not seriously. You just want to be able to enjoy it. I'll take that second
At
part.
age 26, you're going to need to start there.
At any point, you must start with lessons. Golf is way harder. Ask Tyvis Powell about just showing up on the course and like thinking that you can do it. Berm, don't pretend like.
I played a lot of Sega Genesis PGA Tour Golf 2 when I was a kid, and that's how I learned the game. And I hit a hole in one the third time I ever played, so no big deal. Okay, so let's establish a baseline. Number one, on a scale of 1 to 10, how good was Stetson Bennett when he won a national championship for Georgia in 2021? Because that's where I think that 2021 Georgia team is the comparison to this 2024 Ohio State team mostly, right? Not the 2022 Georgia team.
Yeah, I'd say that year he was like a 6.
I was going to say I thought he was a 6.
Now, where would we have put Kyle McCord last year? No, on that scale.
I would say like a 5 or like a 4.5, maybe.
So Ohio State was this close to beating Michigan and subsequently probably winning a national championship this past season, right? If we give Kyle McCord a 4.5 or a 5 and Stetson Bennett a 6, then you have to get a 6 out of this year's quarterback, right?
I think what helped Stetson Bennett is that, like, if you lined him up next to Kyle McCord and watched them throw the football, you would think that Kyle McCord would be the better option. Stetson Bennett was able to elevate Georgia primarily with his legs, which I think is like a different offshoot of this conversation. Ohio State doesn't need a hero at quarterback throwing the football for them to win a national title. I think they need someone who's able to do more things with their feet than Kyle McCord was able to do in the second half of last season.
Yeah. I think you need someone who's able to help pick up 2 or 3 extra first downs a game that the Buckeyes left on the field a year ago. And whether that's by just gritting out an extra yard in the run game, whether that's QB power, whether that's making a more accurate throw, reading a blitz on third down. I don't know, all the things that Kyle McCord at times struggled with. I think that a 6 on that scale is where you have to be. Yeah, if Ohio State's going to win a national championship, if that's the metric if that's the quantification we're giving.
Yeah, I just kind of like, I think that's good if you put a number on it. I just kind of think the quarterback needs to be like efficient, whatever that means. I think that means like don't turn the ball over. But also, you know, probably more consistent accuracy than Ohio State got out of Kyle McCord last year. I think their run game is a big part of it because Stetson Bennett could run too, like especially in the playoffs both years, like his legs were a factor. So I think it's like a playmaking element and efficiency is what Ohio State needs. I don't think they need special play from quarterback. I don't think they need, like, if they can get a CJ Stroud season, great. Awesome. They'll win the national championship if they get a CJ Stroud season. Or like a Justin, like I don't know that they have that on their roster. Like that kind of elite talent, at least not yet anyway. But I don't think they need it either to win a national title with everything that's going to be around this quarterback. So it's more play for me. It's more playmaking chops and efficiency, I think, are the two biggest things. And I think they could get that out of either guy if we're considering only Will Howard and Devin Brown in the conversation. And I don't think whoever Ohio State's starting quarterback is like needs to be the best quarterback in college football for them to win it all.
I think that's correct. Avery wants to know what our favorite pizza place in Columbus area is.
I like Paulie G's in the Short North. It's probably my favorite.
Tommy's on campus is probably my favorite. It's just some place I always loved. And I do like somewhere in particular their pizza, the brewery.
I've never heard of that place.
You're not familiar? I think they got great pizza there, but I don't eat a lot of pizza in Columbus. So when I'm there, I eat Roosters and Taco Bell. And Taco Bell when I'm at Austin's house.
Gallows on Bethel is my favorite pizza place in Columbus. I think it's the best. And there are also multiple places that you can get it, including a spot you really want a place that's fun. And the Ward family will also be found at. If we don't go to the one on Bethel and we go hang out in Bridge Park, where there's a Gallows booth in the North Market, the renamed or second version of North Market, I'll still grab the pizza there, and then the girls can eat whatever else they want from the various vendors in there. So 2 options for me to get that Gallows slice.
What's the worst pizza we've ever had on the road? Is it is it emos in St. Louis?
That was pretty bad. Yeah.
And I know people like swear by it, but maybe it was just really bad that day.
Also, I think we give too much credit to Hotbox in Indianapolis because it's the only thing we can get after games in like Indiana or Purdue, and it's not very good either.
It's a pretty average pie. Yeah.
Bill, who's the place on Penn State's campus that has that like croissant flaky crust?
Highway.
Oh, that place was amazing.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
Ooh, that's got me hungry for this weekend in Philadelphia, where there's going to be a lot of good food, and everyone wanted to know. Got more questions than this than the quarterback. They want to know if Cody's going to finish the story on Sunday night.
I'm actually kind of torn on it. I think yes. They put him through a lot over this last year after not giving him the title last year. So I think he will win on Sunday. But I don't think I'd be shocked if he doesn't, but I think he will.
Okay.
I think it's clear that Roman Reigns wants to go to Hollywood and do other things and get out of WWE. So yes, Cody.
But he's not good at it. He already had his shot and he botched
Have you ever watched
it.
The Rock in a movie? He's not good at it.
I've seen them both in Fast and Furious movies, and one revolutionized the franchise, and the other got a cameo in the offshoot and couldn't finish the deal. Wasn't invited back.
Well,
you tell me which is which.
I think that sometimes when you're used to succeeding at everything you do at a very high level, and then you go out and you don't do it quite as well as you wanted to, it only motivates you to do it more and do it better. And that finding time to spend all this energy in the wrestling ring is probably not helping Roman Reigns on his path to Hollywood stardom. And now that's what he's interested in. So yes, this will be Cody Rhodes winning at WrestleMania on Sunday night.
If he doesn't, I'm burning the field to the ground. Sorry, birds. That's the risk you run when you host an event like this. I don't think I'm going to be alone, Bill. I think there's going to be the Philadelphia marks in the market are they're not going to be real happy if Roman returns.
Yeah, as someone was asking me about it on Thursday, and I said it's either going to be one of the most historic wins in the history of the WWE, and like a moment people will remember forever, or the end of the WWE because burn that stadium to the ground, and the Eagles are going to have to find a new place to play, unfortunately, in the fall.
I think the story will be finished, and it will require a lot of shenanigans because I don't think that there's any way in the world that The Rock and Roman do not win on Saturday to turn it into Bloodline rules. So we'll see what those shenanigans entail. But as long as Cody holds the belt at the end, I'll be happy and Liberty will be happy, and that's all that matters to me.
Do you think, now this is just us talking, should we just have you guys do a WWE podcast every week? That there's obviously an audience here for the segment of the fan base that wants it. Should you guys just do that once a week? Not like on the podcast daily or whatever, but I'm just wondering.
Not here.
I want to make sure that people can separate this, but back in the old days, during COVID, we did home beers when we would sit around and just drink and shoot the crap. And people seem to like when we do road breaks now. And I'm wondering if there's enough of an audience for that people would listen to you two talk about men in tights.
We do that every day anyway.
Yeah,
I think there
is. I think that there is, and I would like to find some way to get a response from the viewership about that. So send in either a text or a comment if you think that that's a good idea.
Bill does 73 hours of podcasts a week already. What makes you think that he's got more time?
Because if he could talk about WWE for 30 minutes on one, I bet he would enjoy that most of all.
You're probably right, actually.
By the way, we did get a number of questions asking where Kings of Columbus has been over the last few days. Doug, Bill, you can handle that. You're on that show.
Yeah. So originally we just took a week off because Doug was doing like a college tour with his daughter. And then he had like some medical stuff. That the same thing with issue with his eye that I think he talked about before. So I don't think I'm betraying trust here. The same issue he had with his eye that caused him to miss some time before is happening again. So he had to get that taken care of. But hopefully, probably not next week, but I would hope that after the spring game, we'll have Kings of Columbus back. But it is very much still part of our coverage plan. Just life happens sometimes. So we haven't had a show in a couple of weeks.
And instead, we made Freaky Friday on the Podcast Daily, the mailbag edition, a little bit longer than normal. Thanks for hanging with us. Hopefully, you got something out of it. If we didn't get to your question, we still appreciate it. We saw it. We'll try and dig into that more. We've got a long off season ahead. The last week of spring camp is next week, so we'll have time to dive into all of that once we get done. But hope you have a great weekend. We'll talk to you guys again next week in the Woody Hayes Athletic Center. Enjoy WrestleMania weekend or the Final Four, whichever one is more important to you, or just getting outside if we finally have some nice weather wherever you happen to be. For Bill Landis and Jeremy Birmingham, I'm Austin Ward. Thanks again. Have a great weekend. Bye.